Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're digging into a set of ideas that completely flip the script on how we build things. It's called the Lean Startup Method. It's a game plan for navigating the wild, unpredictable world of innovation. And, it all kicks off with a pretty dramatic story of failure. So picture this. This is Eric Ries, the guy who came up with all of this, talking about the moment his first company completely fell apart. He and his co-founder had burned through all their cash. The dot-com bubble had just burst, and after all that work, all that passion, they're just standing there, yelling at each other in the rain. They were literally and figuratively lost, about to walk off in totally opposite directions. It's a gut-wrenching story, but honestly, it happens all the time. So that's the big question, right? What goes wrong? You have these brilliant, passionate people, they've got amazing ideas, they're working their tails off, they might even have funding. So why do so many of them end up on that same rainy street corner, completely defeated? That's the exact problem the Lean Startup was created to solve. And here it is. This is the brutal, painful truth at the core of most of those failures. It's not that they failed to build the thing, they built it. And it's not that they were lazy, they worked incredibly hard. The real problem, the one Eric Ries ran into head first, was that they perfectly, efficiently executed a plan to build a product that no one, in the end, actually wanted to use or pay for.
This gets us to a really painful truth about building something new. We're all fed this myth that if you just have a great vision, a brilliant team, and you work really, really hard, success is basically guaranteed. But the reality is that's just not enough. In fact, sometimes all that hard work just helps you run in the wrong direction even faster.
And that leads to this kind of mind-bending concept Ries calls achieving failure. This is when you do everything you're supposed to do. You hit all your deadlines, you stick to the business plan, you manage your budget perfectly, but you still fail. Why? Because the plan itself was flawed from the very start. You've essentially just efficiently marched your entire company right off a cliff.
Okay, so to avoid that fate, we need more than just a new set of tactics. We need a completely different philosophy. The Lean Startup isn't a checklist. It's a whole new way of thinking about how to build a business when you're operating in the dark.
And first up, we have to change how we even define a startup. It's not about beanbag chairs or working in a garage. A startup is any group of people trying to create something new under conditions of extreme uncertainty. That's the key. So you could be two founders with a laptop, or you could be a manager inside a huge company like General Electric trying to launch a new product line. If you're facing massive uncertainty about your customers and your market, guess what? You're a startup. So if you're a startup, your number one job isn't just to build things or make stuff. Your main goal is to learn. But we're not talking about fuzzy, feel-good learning. We're talking about validated learning. This is the rigorous scientific process of using real data to prove that you're on the right track. It's about finding cold, hard evidence about what customers really want. And that is the only true measure of progress. Okay, so how do we get that validated learning? Well, we use the engine that drives this entire philosophy. It's the very heart of the Lean Startup, the build, measure, learn feedback loop. It's a pretty simple idea. You start with your ideas and hypotheses. First, you build a very basic version of a product, just enough to test your idea. Then you get it out there and measure how real customers actually behave. Not what they say, but what they do. And finally, you learn from that data. You look at what worked and what didn't, and based on that learning, you make a crucial decision. Do we persevere with our current strategy, or do we pivot? The real goal here is to get through this entire loop as fast as humanly possible. And if you want to make that loop go faster, you need the right tools. And the single most important tool in the toolbox is what's called the minimum viable product, or the MVP. Now, the MVP is probably one of the most misunderstood concepts out there. It is not about building the smallest possible product. It's about this: what is the absolute fastest way we can start learning? What's the simplest experiment we can run to get real feedback from customers and complete one full turn of that build, measure, learn loop? Anything you build beyond that before you've learned is just waste. I mean, some of the biggest companies started with incredibly simple MVPs. Zappos? The founder didn't start with a giant warehouse. He just went to shoe stores, took pictures of shoes, and put them online. When someone actually bought a pair, he'd run back to the store, buy it, and ship it himself. Dropbox didn't build their whole complex system first. No way. They just made a simple 3-minute video that showed what the product would do. Their sign-up list exploded from 5,000 to 75,000 people almost overnight. And Groupon? It was just a simple blog where they manually emailed PDF coupons to people. These weren't amazing products. They were amazing learning machines. But a learning machine is only as good as the data you feed it.
And that's why you have to measure the right things. On one side, you've got vanity metrics. These are the numbers that look great on a slide deck, total signups, page views. They make you feel good, but they don't actually tell you anything about the health of your business. On the other side, you have actionable metrics. These show clear cause and effect. Things like conversion rates or a cohort analysis that shows you if the customers you got this month are sticking around longer than the ones from last month. That tells you if your product is getting better. And this kind of real data, it forces you to ask the toughest question of all. Because after you've built your MVP and you've measured with those actionable metrics, you get to the moment of truth. You face the single most important and difficult decision for any founder. Do you pivot or do you persevere?
Now, a pivot isn't just a panic move or a random change. It's a structured, strategic course correction. The idea is you keep one foot planted firmly in what you've already learned, but you change a fundamental hypothesis about your product or your business model. You're not throwing everything out and starting over. You're using what you've learned to make a smarter bet.
And we need to be really clear about this. A pivot is not an admission of failure. In the lean startup world, a pivot is a success. It's a huge milestone. It means you were smart enough and, frankly, brave enough to listen to the evidence instead of just stubbornly following your original plan. It's truly an act of courage.
So it all comes down to this one crucial idea. The lean startup teaches us that the biggest possible waste isn't being inefficient. It's the absolute tragedy of pouring your time, your money, and your passion into efficiently building something that nobody actually needs. So the question isn't just, can we build this? It's, should we build this? And I'll just leave you with that. What are you building? And how do you know, for sure, that it's the right thing? Thanks for joining The Explainer.